Hello and welcome to Gym with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where I talk about marketing data and philosophy. This week we're looking at anxiety and Gen Z because I saw a report recently that apparently the most fear-inducing thing that can happen to Gen Z is that their boss asks for an impromptu call with no context, which is something I do all the time. So let's dive into the reasons why I do that thing, and also a little bit of facts and figures about Gen Z versus millennials and stress and anxiety at work. So recently, I felt attacked, guys, because there were two reports that just seemed to be having a go at poor old Oliver. The first was that apparently the thumbs up emoji is the most passive aggressive emoji you can use at work, and Oliver uses that all the time when he wants to say that he's seen your message or that he approves. Thumbs up. And apparently it's very passive aggressive, and I didn't know this because I'm an old man. So instead, have I replaced that with words? No, I've just replaced it with a different emoji, the rock on emoji or the love emoji. The second thing I saw that seemed to attack me personally was this report that apparently the number one grievance that Gen Z has at work is when their boss will just message them randomly, hey, can we have a quick chat? And they don't say what the chat is about, which is something I do all the time. And I had a few thoughts about this. The first thing I thought was that, to me, that's kind of a failure of management or leadership. If your co-workers or your employees are feeling anxious and worried because you've asked for a chat, that's not good. That shouldn't be happening. Why would that be the case? Now, I can sort of understand the scenario where it's unusual for that to happen. Like you have set meetings with this particular person and suddenly they ask you for a random chat out of the blue, that might cause panic because you'd be like, oh crap, I'm not used to that. Why is this happening? And that might spark alarm bells that something's wrong. But most of the time it shouldn't, because if something is wrong, you will already know that it's wrong. You know, if you're not doing great and your performance hasn't been great, you'll probably know that thing. It's already been mentioned to you probably. And if you're going to have a serious conversation with your boss, probably it should be through a weekly meeting or some sort of review that you would normally have. So I can sort of see that if it's random and it's not part of the cadence with that particular person, or it's just somebody you normally don't talk to, that it could be quite worrying. But as leaders, we shouldn't have that. We don't want to cause anxiety. We don't want people to be worried just because we want a quick chat with them. And I think when I look at my own reasons for having quick chats and not mentioning what they're about, I'm pretty sure most leaders and bosses will be in the same boat as me, which is just that we're really busy. It's not that we want to cause fear. It's just that I'm really busy. I don't have the time to type out the reason why I need a quick chat, because typing that out would take longer than actually having the chat. I need to give you a large amount of context, and I just need to speak to you, and it will be quicker if I do it that way. That's 99% the reason why I would ask for somebody for a quick chat and not go, I need to have a quick chat about blah, 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 because I'm just trying to save a little bit of time. Sometimes it might be a few other use cases, though. It might be that I want a raw opinion and I don't want somebody to type an opinion where they're going to stop and think about it and all this kind of stuff. I just want to hear their thoughts off the top of their head about how to deal with the situation or how to deal with a person. I want a more honest take, maybe, and I'll get that through having a quick chat versus text, where you don't always get that. You get a polished truth sometimes. And there are sometimes cases, but I think they're kind of positive in a way, or I hope they're perceived positively anyway, where something's gone wrong, or maybe a client has decided not to do part 2, and I will ask for a quick chat with the person that's been on that project just to let them know, hey, this has gone wrong, or the client's decided not to go with us on this particular part. I just want you to know that's nothing to do with you. That tends to be the main reason why I want to do that, because I think it's important, even if we're then going to put that in the main chat, or we're going to talk about that as in a group discussion. I still think it's good to talk to that person individually before that happens. Just mention to them, like, hey, you know, I don't want you to worry about this thing. This is not your fault. Don't stress about this. Because I think sometimes when you're talking about things in groups, it seems like, oh, you know, they're just saying this to be nice. Whereas if you actually talk to that person and you take the time to do that, they see that you are sincere in delivering that. So those are my reasons for sometimes being guilty of asking for a quick chat and then not saying why. I'm also like weirdly accurate about my timings when I ask for this. I'm always like, I need 7 minutes at 1:15 or something like that. Again, I'm just really busy and I'm trying to squeeze in that conversation at a particular time. It's nothing to do with trying to cause stress. But thinking about anxiety and Gen Z in the workplace, I wanted to do a little bit of research into this. And I found this 2023 Deloitte survey, which found that 46% of Gen Z employees frequently feel stressed or anxious at work. 46% frequently stressed or anxious. And I was like, that seems incredibly high. That can't be healthy or good at all. Why is this? Is it because in previous generations, this was not something that was tracked? I think that can be true sometimes, something seems high because nobody was asking the question before. In some cases, maybe if we time travel back to the 70s and we asked people back then, are you feeling stressed or anxious, it would be exactly the same, but we just never recorded that. And so now it seems as if Gen Z is more stressed and more anxious than previous generations, but that might not actually be the case. But the report by Deloitte found that one of the main reasons for feeling stressed was because of the pressure of being always on. People have Slack and notifications and emails on their phone, and so the work-life boundaries that previous generations had have been eroded a little bit there. Now, obviously, Gen Z, they entered the workforce, which is always a weird thing, right? I talked in a previous blog about this, the big other at work, and when you start working, you sort of enter into this system of rules and faux pas and regulations that you're not familiar with. They're not necessarily written down everywhere, but everybody follows them. It's a really bizarre set of rules that don't necessarily make any sense. It's just that they've been passed down through generations. And when you're entering into this symbolic order, it's really weird. It's really noticeable. Like, why are we all putting, I hope you're well on emails and all this kind of stuff, just because that's the reason everybody else has done. So we kind of copy that. But when you're getting to grips with that for the first time, it can be quite difficult because the expectations from university versus a real job are quite different, glaringly so. And so I always think it's quite a stressful thing to start a career, and it's perhaps normal to feel a little bit of anxiety and stress. But the report by Deloitte found that social anxiety is more prevalent among Gen Z workers. And there's challenges with public speaking, with voicing opinions during meetings. And many Gen Z workers are calling for soft skills training and for safe work environments to better navigate those situations. And perhaps this points to a societal issue where people are having less face-to-face interactions. They're more likely to talk to somebody online, through text, through emails. And so they're just not as used to talking to people and in those situations as they would normally be for previous generations. Perhaps that's one of the reasons behind that. Apparently there is a preference and for Gen Z and this is from the Deloitte thing, I've not just made this up, for lazy girl jobs, which seems a little bit sexist to me, which is low stress, well-paying roles that prioritize mental health. And wouldn't we all like a low stress, well-paying job? I'm not sure that's a lazy girl job. I think that's just a dream scenario for everyone, isn't it? But they don't find that because work is sort of naturally a stressful thing. And so they adopt to strategies like quiet quitting or pursuing less stressful jobs. But experts have sort of suggested that developing resilience and refining workplace skills can help them manage stress more effectively in the long term. There was an expert from Columbia University, psychologist Kathleen Pike, who emphasized that while Gen Z has contributed positively by normalizing mental health conversations, they also are guilty of blurring the distinction between typical workplace stress and mental health disorders. Stress and anxiety, she notes, can sometimes act as a normal, adaptive responsive rather than signs of illness. And really, really interesting points here. So I think for me, is work stressful? Is it supposed to be a little bit stressful? Yeah, I think it probably is. And as I say, especially when you're entering it into the first couple of years of your employment life where, let's be frank, you don't know what you're doing. You start a new company, you don't know what you're doing necessarily. You don't know how you fit. You don't know the people. There's a lot of known unknowns in that situation. So it's normal to be stressful. I always think new jobs are something that everybody celebrates, and nobody sort of says that they're really, really stressful, a new job. And a lot of people think about quitting their new job because they feel so uncomfortable in the new situation and they don't have time to settle in necessarily. There's a real pressure for results when you've just been hired, and you want to make the most of it and you want to prove that you're useful, but at the same time you're the most useless person because you are new. And I guess if you're new to the world of work, those things apply over a longer period of time versus somebody who's been 5 or 6 years in employment and they know their role and they know what they're doing more typically. So I did want to sort of compare that to previous generations. And there's not a lot of data around it. I'm a millennial apparently. And obviously we were the generation that sort of, we basically did the work in destigmatizing mental health. What exists today would not have happened without my generation, I feel. But when I started work, I would say it was pretty unusual for people to have policies and referrals around mental health, or even to be a consideration and talking point. It was definitely something that you didn't really talk about. So I think today for Gen Z, although maybe anxiety is more of a prevalent problem, there's also a lot more solutions out there. There's a lot more therapy that's accessible to people online. It's more affordable than ever. And so there's more positive outcomes there than when I was entering the workforce. But I did manage to find a study that found in 2023 that 52% of Gen Z workers reported experiencing burnout and stress, and 49% of millennials reported that. Now, you would expect millennials to be less than Gen Z, just because I think generally you get on in your career, you get more comfortable in yourself and what you're doing. And so you would expect that number to be lower. I'm surprised that it's so close. And so I guess it prompts two really big questions. The first is that, is the reason that we're reporting more mental health problems, more burnouts, because we're more aware of mental health, and so we're more likely to diagnose a problem that was there anyway? Or is it a case that because we're aware of these symptoms, we are more likely to misdiagnose what is sort of normal background stress and say, oh, I'm burning out, or this is a problem, and we bring it to the fore? Now, you might think that that's a little bit controversial, but I do think that there is a case that you can get ill if you read about a particular illness. You suddenly get ill from that thing. If you hear that everybody is sick, suddenly you become sick. There was a town in Sweden where people were allergic to electricity, if you believe such a thing. They were feeling tired, fatigued because of electricity, and they went to this particular town in Sweden. There was no electricity there, and as the PR from this town grew over time, the town's population also grew. And I think that was a case of, the more people read, oh, tiredness, fatigue, yeah, I've got that, maybe I'm allergic to electricity, which is not scientifically proven at all. And I think that's a case where you can become ill because of your mind. Your mind can make you ill if you convince yourself that you are. Your reality is sort of created there. And so I think it is possible that if you are in a sphere where you start to feel a little bit burnt out, and then you see a lot of material, which there is at the moment, around, oh, people are burnt out, oh, people are stressed, and oh, people are quiet quitting, that you can start to think that you have those same things. I'm not accusing people of like faking these things. I'm just saying that I think that's something that can happen to yourself. And so in my research about anxiety and the workplace and Gen Z, I think what I would probably say, in my opinion, is that Gen Z doesn't seem to be more stressed than previous generations. It looks like it's pretty much in line with previous generations. The second thing is, I think work will always be stressful. It's not supposed to be lazy girl jobs. I don't think most jobs are like that. And I don't think that most of us would like it if our job was low stress all the time. There was no stakes. We weren't doing something interesting. I think that the human mind likes a challenge. It likes to overcome obstacles. It likes to hit new heights. And in doing anything worthwhile, you're always going to have a risk associated with that. You're always going to have a little bit of stress associated with that. So I think that work is generally stressful. I don't think that Gen Z is more stressful, is more stressed or anxiety than previous generations. And I do think that there's more support mechanisms out there than ever before, which I think is a fantastic thing. So to wrap up, the next time your boss says that they want an impromptu call and they don't say what it is, don't get stressed. They're probably just too busy to type out the message. We should all be aware of our own mental health. We should all be working to try and get the best out of ourselves on a day-to-day basis. And as employers, we should all support our people to make sure that happens. And that sometimes means going against that rules or making allowances to people so that they can thrive. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Gen Z is more anxious or stressed than previous generations. I just think that they're better at articulating it in the long run. Do you agree with me? I've been a little bit controversial this week. Let me know in the comments. Thanks very much for watching Gin with Gwynne.